even though the thing that you lose, you never really had to begin with, on the day that it's made clear to you that you're never going to have it again, that thing that you clung to, it breaks your heart that it's gone. Hey everybody, my name is Nick. I'm a director and editor, and today I'm going to be talking about the film Dust in the Wind, directed by Hou Hsiao Hsien. Dust in the Wind is from 1986, and it's Hou Hsiao Hsien's seventh film. Hou Hsiao Hsien is obviously an important director in the Taiwanese New Wave film movement, but this film also features two other prominent figures, Wu Nian Jen, who wrote this film and many other Taiwanese New Wave films, and Mark Lee Ping-bin, who is one of the most lauded cinematographers in Taiwan. So this film isn't just a representation of Hou Hsiao Hsien's directing style, it's also a representation of some other very important figures in the Taiwanese film wave movement. And I think it's good to pay attention to these kind of things because there's a lot of people that it takes to make a film. So when you start to study film movements, I think looking below just who the director is and to some of the other creators of the film is something important and fun that we can do. I talked before about how a film like The Boys from Feng Kuei represents kind of the early beginnings of the Taiwanese New Wave movement and how you can watch it to see how the film movement developed. This film is deep in the middle of the movement. It's very established. And so I think you can watch this film as a very standard, clear representation of the Taiwanese New Wave movement and to understand the very typical characteristics that a film from this movement might have. So thematically, we kind of discussed this idea of living in rural life and leaving it for this cold, industrialized world. That's a theme that pops up a lot in these Taiwanese films. These themes of longing and unrequited love are also often present. In this film, we also have the expected long takes of very beautiful, meticulously composed and designed wide shots. Now, I'm not pointing these things out to say that this film is derivative of other work. I think that with these kind of specific film movements, they are like similar to how we can consider genre films. You know, these are things that ground us and what we can expect when we watch a movie here. It's part of the fun, it's part of the reason to learn about these film movements, because we can start to see these patterns. We can start to see how these specific group of artists and filmmakers living in this very specific region during this very specific time thought about art, thought about aesthetics, and thought about the world really, and how they wanted to frame it and show it to us. So I think that is why we kind of categorize and look at the similarities between all these films, the thematic similarities, the artistic similarities, the technical similarities. All these things are fun to look at when you analyze a film because they help you understand how these people saw the world and what they were trying to teach us. So this idea of leaving rural life and going into industrialization and city life, being forced into this cold, unfeeling world that ultimately maybe makes a lot of promises but doesn't deliver on those promises. That is explored in a lot of Taiwanese New Wave films, but it's really explored really well in this film, Dust in the Wind. We have this main character, Yuan, and he latches on to this girl from his hometown named Yun. So these names are very similar, but there's an interesting detail about these names. The boy's name, Yuan, means far, and the girl's name, Yun, means cloud. So interesting to think about, and I think if we think about the meaning of these two words, then we can really understand the meaning of this film. So Yuan latches on to this girl and uses her, she moves with him to Taipei, they go together. And he latches onto her and uses her to connect back to the past, the village that they came from, but he also uses her as motivation to strive to make it in this unfeeling new environment that he's in that scares him. The names of these two characters are similar. A lot of people in the film tell them like, oh, you guys are fated to be together. You're so cute. Your names are the same. And the boy begins to believe this fact. He believes it so much that throughout the film, he sort of kind of barely tries to make Yun feel special. And he feels disturbed when other people like this movie theater poster painter boy at one point in the film starts crudely hitting on her. He feels disturbed by this fact, but he never really acts. He never really does anything very passionate. It's not this typical romance film where you see this love between these two people. he sort of is taking for granted that this girl is his soulmate and that they'll end up together. So as you watch this film, especially as an adult person, there's very little indication that these two people are romantically compatible. You know, it's very childish. You know, it's a common romantic dynamic. We understand this kind of relationship of convenience. Two people from a small town kind of just assume that they'll end up together. Maybe one person is assuming a little more than the other. But this is a very relatable situation, and one that many people have been in as you grow up. This idea of young love where you kind of just believe that it'll work out. So it works on that end, but this also works as a metaphor for the dream that you take with you from your youth. You know, it's a dream that maybe you take for granted. Consider, let's go back to this name, Yun, it's a cloud, right? This is an ephemeral thing, a thought, really, an idea. You think you're seeing something concrete in a cloud. It's something that you can make to be whatever you want it to be. You know, a cloud can be an elephant, it can be the shape of Taiwan, it can be a movie camera, can be anything. But in reality, it's none of those things. In reality, it's just gas that's going to dissipate. You know, Dust in the Wind is the title of the film, and that's what it's suggesting, is that these things are going to blow away and become nothing. You know, this dream that you have could be to be with a specific person. It could be to get rich, could be to get a specific career. It's an idea that we come up with of something that we want. But over time, as the cold reality of this industrialized world that we live in sets in, you're forced to work a crappy job in a print shop with a mean boss who doesn't care about you. You're forced to be exiled to mandatory military service on a weird island somewhere where you don't get to see your dream anymore. You know, the possibility of that dream becoming a reality just slowly fades away. Even though the thing that you lose, you never really had to begin with, on the day that it's made clear to you that you're never going to have it again, that thing that you clung to, it breaks your heart that it's gone. And I think this film illustrates that process very beautifully and very humanely, and I think that's what it does so well. You know, it's a theme that I find a little bit of a personal connection to myself, as I recently left Taiwan, lived there for 15 years. It's a place that I love and have a lot of connection to, and I have come back to the unfeeling, cold, industrialized world of America. I'm also clinging to a dream of, you know, maybe working on films and documentaries, creating great artistic content. You know, this dream that I have, it might be only a cloud, something that I've brought with me that isn't real. It's a sad thought, right? Well, before you get too depressed, I think there's an interesting detail in this film that I think offers a little advice to dreamers like myself and maybe like you. It's a bit of a spoiler, so if you don't want to know the exact ending of this film, you can skip ahead to the very, very end. So what happens in this film is that Ayun ends up with the postman, the man who delivers these concrete items of paper to her. He's the postman who's delivering the letters that Ayun is sending to her. And he's sending these dreams out into the ether and hoping and believing and even having a little bit of entitlement to the fact that this love is going to carry on and that he deserves it. And then the sad irony is that the postman, the man delivering those dreams to her, he's the one who ends up being with her. So it's ironic, it's a little nihilistic in a way, it's a little bit sad, but if we look at it from another way, it's offering us a little bit of advice, right? It's that you want to be the person who delivers, the person who gives people something they can hold on to, the person who shows up every day, the person who is where you need to be to make things happen, right? You know, you could think about this film in some other kind of negative ways and think that maybe the postman was sabotaging Ayun and throwing his letters away, but you know, I think that's just an excuse. The reality is that a dream doesn't work unless you're actively trying to make it so. So my advice to everyone and to myself is to be like the postman, show up every day and give people something that they can actually hold on to. Motivation for the new year, little motivation for me as well. The most interesting thing about this film for me was the writing and the details and the thematic stuff that happened. I think a lot of the technical stuff is also very beautiful. If you look at some of the shots of the train going through the mountain, all this stuff is fantastic. It's something that you could look at and study for a very long time. If there's one other name that you can take away from this, it would be Mark Lee-Ping Bin. Look at his work and try to find a lot of the films that he made. He did Millennium Mambo, which is a fantastic film that we reviewed before, and the camera work in that is just magnificent. I mean, all of his camera work is magnificent. He won an award for Dust in the Wind. So if you're into kind of the cinematography side, definitely a lot of stuff to study there as well. So look into that. Let me know if there's any other films you would like me to watch, review. Thank you for doing all the things that you do on YouTube to support the channel, like liking, sharing, putting the video on repeat and watching it 5 times in a row. I appreciate you, and I'll see you guys next time. Bye-bye.